I was thinking, our listeners could really be interested to know more about body language and more about being able to predict various things by looking at patterns and being able to track. And whole body calibration is being able to look at body movement and whole body and body part movement to be able to determine more, the very cognitive condition that's going on within. And 6 seconds or long before somebody becomes sort of really conscious, perhaps, of a choice I've made, someone who's skilled can see what the choice is relative. And so, there's a source more of one's mindlessness being in the present. And that being in the present might not necessarily be full in the present, of course, because there can be a lot of patterning which isn't allowing someone to be able to be receptive per se. So I think it's a really good show, just a little bit about this. But of course, you can tell if somebody's got a gap in the cloud bank because there'll be pause. That's something, isn't it? Because you've got a gap in a cloud bank. But how's somebody receptive? Of course, like where something is inducted and it's entrained, it can be just because, of course, like a Gosling first seeing a beloved, like, as a pilot, for instance, that was the very first fluffy warm, and so the Goslings, not having a parent, adapted themselves to, the pilot who flew a plane or something. So it's really, you and I, we really have a precognitive, meaning something's going on before you've decided anything or anyone else. And pretty much in our common parlance and common sense, we have an I awareness, a state of being, which is impressed in the cloud bank in a JC quanta. And it's within the living. And this is present when you were born. And this I is 50% of ourselves. The other 50% is am, which is your body. You could see if somebody's more in an I-aware state because there's grace, which comes more, people would agree, and someone has charisma more where anyone is. And so these are things which somebody should have just natural that exudes. And in an I-aware state, you are this way because you've got a more empty center point, more being in the moment. It's not something you could be describing because that's not going to cause someone to be in the moment. And so it's sort of like a void where someone is in the moment. And so, where free association is one can go from one subject to another and there's no stickiness per se. But where stickiness would have been where somebody has sort of bites their lip or looks down their nose or, they've got other sorts of things where they can't come up with something so easily. Free association is really where some functional plasticity is. And what's the source more of this mindlessness more, which is precognitive itself being in I-awareness, and where you've cleared away all your desire and unnecessary fear fully. And you're being able to predict more a future because you're really empty and receptive. And this is your common sense, and this is common parlance, this is common practice and custom, and for all of us to be autonomous selves. But what happens when somebody's robotized sort of thing, one can't perhaps change the sequence of something which should be upon seeing that, and can't pull it back or whatever, like artificial intelligence wouldn't be able to. But you and I can. So you and I really have a precognitive commitment to each other, of course, and in unity consciousness, and we can really easily see where anything is a bit of frozen logos, of course. And that predictive aspect of ourselves really is of an internal syntax, which you and I, we can witness, and we're the witness of. And as this is developed more as a silent witness, which is I, you're just looking at things more stoic and looking at the ethical value of whatever something is. And you could see that where the frequency of the accessing cues is more minimalized, meaning body movements and things is more minimalized. Somebody's really in a more associated state versus, where they've got a lot more body movements and this sort of thing. Someone's showing that they're going over things, a little bit more internal and this sort of thing. But the degree to which, you can be present, of course, fully there, that's something which is in your sport and in an athletic capacity to be able to do this. And that's developed and it's programmed. And this is sort of more precognitive, you see, to care for others and to do unto others as you would care for yourself. And reasoning comes to be more not ad hoc, meaning something happened in the same time and space, and apparently that is cause and effect, which it's not, or straw man, where two types of polarized reasoning is given to anybody listening, and neither of those satisfies what you have inside yourself. Or bandwagon, which make, just like because everybody's going along with what something, mob rules, or slippery slope where you've gone on to something but you presuppose some fact existed which didn't, or ad hominem, of course, where it's just like personally bullying or harming or neglecting, and that's just ad hominem types of argument, which is all fallacious types of reasoning. And so where somebody could become more expert at being able to get a sense of this, but you and I, we could be cultivating more of our eye-awareness state, which is more unity, conscious itself. And so then your predictive programming more in unity is present, isn't it, versus fuzz and logos, which could influence how any new information then would be received and how that's being assimilated to create a change where you're able to recall information where it's being modified because you've got new information present. Can who is in front of you there have ease of ability to take on new information? Very important, of course, because that's a clue that somebody is not in a dissident state. So because somebody can actually take new information on and modify the way that they were or thought about something, the chain of command really comes from with a people, not a corporation. And so who's there down there where a corporation is? They would have to have a thought that some joiner exists and does it. You see, well, that's a question. Because it's a matter like, where somebody would be having a game that they put together, and you select the people by the colour of their socks, for instance, or some other process. But if something was more equal, of course, you'd imagine the game probably going to be pretty good, whatever that is. But the way that you've selected things, is probable that if somebody just only had one winner and one loser, in your own play set, it might not be as proper like you would think. That's sort of a bit frozen logos somewhat. But as associated neural efficiency really is already present inside ourselves, like I was saying before, it's a more whole brain pattern state of your own being, and it's sort of more of a preferred mode of you and I or anybody sorting information properly. And where you contrast what this is, but you could see luminists, of course, they've got a programming more or less going on where red material is, and it's sort of something which really accepts that some means goes on there where it justifies the end, which not in common parlance and common sense does that occur at all. It's not our common practice. Our common practice would be to look at the ethic of something versus you've got the end that you would achieve, and so the means justifies that is not correct, of course. So somebody would have to have accepted a sense of some deficiency to some degree, and maybe not. Of course, you wouldn't know that, you see. Yes, and so it's sort of becoming more aware of where things are. But what's common parlance, and you don't have to really twist anybody's arm to get into common parlance. Everybody should see that immediately someone's agreeing with their adversary. I mean, this is common sense. You can't harm, injure, cost or damage, and you to mitigate everything. So you can't continue to cause harm where something is. It's another beloved's claim would have arisen, wouldn't it? But it's the attitude more where somebody is and a focused refinement more of the attention and a dedicated more being to a level where something is more interesting. You could be dedicated and have dedicated learning, and that would be one level, wouldn't it? And then there's levels. It could be interesting, of course. It could be more adaptive because you can feel how could you adapt this information that could help you cause people and your own self to live life more abundantly. You've got experiential types of being, haven't you, as a certain modes of learning, and then you've got sort of passive, more or less non-first attentive types of sort of levels of learning, really, where anybody is. But how open are you, or anybody else is in front of you, to take aboard new information? Where somebody couldn't do that, it is because they're in a dissident state, you see. And so there's 4 levels of learning, of course, and 0 level learning is where somebody's really comfortable where they are. Learning level 1 is, I really do need to learn something. Learning level 2 is really realizing that you've got opportunity that must exist, for learning. And then level 3 would be more like a strategy. Level 4 is sort of a self-actualized type of a learning. And this is before you've to think about something, you've got something has existed, which is present, which is more unity versus premature. And you've got a lot of premature precognitive types of commitment that you could look at and see that those are things which you would change because there was a missed opportunity to learn how to respond more effectively to some prejudice, perhaps. But, and so how does this really relate to everybody? That you could see certainly by body language and by listening, of course, and just having face validity. A body which is formed from the land has a postal and has domiciled themselves from the land versus inside a body politic. So inside a body politic would be something like a corporation, which none of that was selected by you or I, or be sovereign of their nature up to some degree. It's supposed to be, and to what degree does that exist on that level? But that all corporations are below, but the body politic is below a body that comes from the land. So a body that comes from the land, that's actually sovereign, that's actually really selected and this sort of thing. Whereas a body politic could be something that just people collected together themselves a bit somewhere, but it's not representing we the people. But where we the people is represented, it's a proper chain of command, of course. And so you could use the words from and is, and you could say coming now, of course, and words that's like this, which a corporation can't really do. But, where the world has gone on for 100 years or more, and you could look at a couple 100 million people more murdered and genocided, you've got a secret military special ops always run directing, being directed by the company people who, that can be not your nation per se, and certainly could have a different sort of a training because it's coming out of a body politic and not necessarily a sovereign body. And a civilian role is always below this level, like what we're talking where that is. So it's really where somebody could have gone through beast barrack. That's not a natural sort of circumstance at all. An institutionalized violence. So you've got a means justifying the end in some luministic sort of mindset, unquestioned perhaps, and all carrying out some coordinated sabotage. Look, you've got 192 corporate nations, of course, and they're all bankrolled really by and directed by the controllers of more superpower. And that's, you're looking at a lot of things which is redacted, like title, for instance, from a document to be able to get to where that is, which your natural rights flow from, which could give you a true ID. But your ID, like when you walk into a restaurant, some people could know what they'd like to order and know where they'd sit, and others, it's taking a quite a bit of time for them to come up with all that. You could see a purposeful, slant, more of course, where monopolization is, can't you? Because you're never ever looking at the other side, or you could actually cite what the other side is. But it's just made like some other side exists, which it's a false opposition to have got something done for someone else, but not you or I. It's common law, courts of record trial by grand jury sort of process, which is more lawful, and that actually is proper testimony. But because it's sort of done under procedures that would relate to what this is in a sovereign way, versus done in a corporation, which most people couldn't see that to be natural or common, which that's the word sovereign. That's what that just means. So it's really precognitive selecting, and that's 6 seconds or long before anybody actually is conscious of anything, Lukey.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's been years. I still might not be conscious of it. Back to Jubb.
Well, it takes a moment in time, but you could go back through what this is and start to hear what's being said more. Very important, because what happens really of your natural right, where title is, of course, which is our species of woman, and then you've got a real true ID versus an ID which is only fictional, which is inside a corporation and isn't going to guarantee you to have any natural right per se, which only would flow from you being domiciled properly. But if everybody's just customer profiled into something which is a corporation, not knowing, you see, and lots of things are going on, you would think, not knowing, and wordsmithedness and stuff, and that's all stuff which really should stop, shouldn't it? Because what's precognitive really is your liberty, meaning we're all equal, because how could you ever have proper judgment and law and order if that doesn't exist, like you've got where a monopolization is, or where you've gone where somebody is and they're only chattel, and it's a number more or less, and it's under a complaint more or less as a heading, and otherwise it would really have the title of a claim. But where you and I or anybody is and never knew that, you were only in an infant decedent's account, meaning that something had to be probated, and somebody had to give that account of service, so it could only be listed as a level of a complaint, which is really a fiction that where somebody had a lien that was put, over the all caps of that name itself as a utility company, and all that is a franchised ID, which doesn't give anybody proper natural right to flow as it should or wisely would in a land where everything is economically inducted positively as it should be, because then there's not the outside all sorts of interferedness in the things which is going on. Those are things which could be corrected. But it's really, this father's mind more nothing really is truth in better more than what the Toltec could teach you, which is meaning come from the city here, Turtle Island, and mutually beneficialness always was a definition of truth, which they were always passed on. And you could speak to the view really, which is truth structure, which is really told more in a contextual condition, so it meets a contextual conditioning that's natural and common, but because always something's going on before a crime and afterward also, but ongoing under a system which kind of drafted venue and taken away, one's natural right, like at the courthouse, which is common courthouse, which has venue, which is from the land as well as commercial, but often would be just selected to be commercial and not properly from the land, which is a proper procedure, and so the claims where something would be only just a corporation and records and corpus delicti behind it, meaning no body, and where somebody is, does anybody challenge any of that? But what would be the reason when another process occurs, which you and I, we should have, which doesn't really have that legal kill-box set up, because there's no common law trespass against bonds and legal name fraud, which all the banking and all that has been based upon, and would need to be corrected, you see.
Yeah.
Are you there?
I have heard you speak about this stuff for years, like I said, and then there's more and more people on social media talking about it, but you have different terminology than some of the other people. You know, there's people
Yes,
talking
because
about the
you only
Moors.
need 26 people to have this, you see. And that's the enemy's been the ignorance of ourselves to let a corpse be of itself, and not have any directedness from the living, which it's simple for this to be, which is an Article 3 or Article 4 court law, which is Article 3 really is over the top of a contract and looks at whether a contract actually was upheld or not. And then Article 4 really is what errors existing in the governance at the moment are these three components of government: the judiciary, the legislative components of it, and the administrative components of it. Are they supposed to be separate in their powers so that they could keep a check and balance relative? And how did anybody get elected or selected? And I don't know that those are proper policy, more or less, that's coming from with the people. And so that's a challenge, which is so simple for that to be corrected. It's not a difficult matter whatsoever. It's very simple, but it's difficult if we don't. The cost to uphold what the past is will be just wrong. Of course, you can't. But where somebody has a true ID, and just you could hear me say this, and does it make sense to you that if you're all caps, that's not you. If it's just one word that's your name, that is the actual noun. Two words to make that doesn't. And so, what are you? You've got some, a noun which identifies you as a word, as a name that you're the holder of. Your species is a species of we're man. And that gives you natural right to flow from, because you flow from title being held and kept versus given away in a system that's pledged, which need to be corrected, of course. In the past, there's been a split, of course, between identity, which what we talk about, and personality. And what's omnipresent, like what we're talking about, is you or I or anybody assisting to help manifest this to take place where it can and should all over the globe. And isn't it that anybody that ever said, well, how come the government is doing something and is that correct? Most internationally might have questions that relate to how somebody's going on where they are and looking back where we are, or anyone. And becoming more aware and having proper unity consciousness is really like a seeking of agreement immediate, and where somebody isn't there's no mitigation of harm, injury, cost, or damage. And so it can be discretion used by anybody that's upholding an equity interest from you and I. And that's something which somebody comes to learn to be more, but it's not necessary, because you're only just doing what's common and common sense and having common parlance where something is. And it's literature which would say that something was fictional and was written like, it supported violence itself. But where did it say that the pen is mightier than the sword, which it is? And isn't it that what always goes on anyway? And where you and I have an agentic state, we care very much that it's the pen that's mightier than the sword. And a growing death toll, more or less, from genocide around the world, from toxin and from war, and war that's like from all illicit compound and things, and from legal battery and medical battery. Where is who like you and I characterized, you see? Where is this? Because that's above all that thinking, isn't it? And where are you and I? Well, there's a procedure which you and I can have, and it's very easy to do. And that's what needs to be. It's a proper chain of command where joinery is. It's not going to be, can't be questioned. Government is pre-authorised and pre-ordered to protect the interest of we the people, and can't be going against that. So it protects and stops anybody from stymieing or impacting the process of what this is. That's the law, to not to hinder in any way what this is, like what we're talking about. So not anyone could be abridged of any natural right, where you can look and see under C.B. Kelly, you can see a lot of genocide really has been defied a lot, and there's a transient perception that goes on which really isn't a fact at all. And you've got a... are you there, mate?
Yes, mate. I'm here.
Yeah, because I got a bit of battery. Let's see. But okay. Nobody's got to see right now where you've got the Uyghurs in the northwest of China, or Rohingya in Myanmar, or Syrians, or Iraqi, or Afghanistani, or Ukrainian, or Rwandan before this, and you've got genocide and the Armenian genocide. Many of these people, if you ask them, do they know about this? It's not something perhaps people could be aware of, but we should, and know how did that occur, but where and how to stop what this is immediately, because you've got laws from the land in relation to what is lower, which a body politic, which wasn't selected from be the people, but as just a body politic, can be a religion, could be a lot of things, but it wasn't selected and didn't go through a proper process per se of you and I selecting this. And isn't it that people's spiritual process is relative to be something individual? It certainly is. It's usual that the state would be interfering with that, and nor your choice of your own executive guidance and this sort of thing. But it really isn't a thing except what's common to protect people where they are in government and protect people where they are in as we the people. And that this forms because this is the right thing, which should be people be protected rather than just be torn apart where things going on. And so it's common sense that where charges exist, there should be discharge. And it's really the republicing and revenuing that is this fourth estate, which is what we're talking about right now, which is common sense, and it's common parlance, and it's actually what fits above the legislative assembly of the state, because you've got a bureau which has to manage the trust where that is, and that's where this fits in. It's we the people, which is above what this is. And so that's the proper chain of command, where someone's no longer a corporate sheriff. They actually become like the common law sheriff, you see, from the common law. And so it's a higher order of things where something becomes enacted. And this is the government. It's pre-ordered. It's pre-authorised. It's the proper check and balance. And when you haven't had that, what goes on? Mm-hmm. You could think in your mind for a moment, couldn't you?
Yeah.
You see? The real condition is you and I stepping forward and by serendipity causing something to come to be. And it's just natural. It's not has to be. It just becomes what the mission is overall, where something is, which it is anyway, naturally. When we see an emergency, we step up to the plate, and you've shifted more into an agentic state to assist to help assist create change. And become more educated, because you've got a lot of articles and things that you could look at and read at jubbdavid.com. And what you and I really do to perform our civic duty is really not to be able to stand by and just see crime existing, because that's a misprision and felony to have done so and not report that. Yet when you and I, we see you've got a doctrine of necessity, which really is you having shifted more into your agentic state. relevant to what this is, to help protect. But it isn't a thought mental. No, it doesn't have to be. It's obvious that it's the present evermore, which everybody values. You're a self-autonomy and doesn't want to go down any road where somebody's just slaved out to be. That's just a certain genocide and depopulation of its own self, which all that need to be stopped, which have got a true real ID. It's a silent witness more that's existing ever present, which is absolute. It's you and I really having more space inside ourselves, you've got a process which can help protect you, and you've got a process which can help cause some claim to be heard. Yes. Right. So an agentic state comes from common law, and common law is above because it's a body that's from the land, versus if it's not common, then it's just a body politic and it's of a lower order, well and truly. And so it's really what can have the power of seizure, which is what we're talking about here, which is we the people can visit what's irregular to discharge any charge, and to be able to self-direct, and to be able to coordinate and be co-creative, and to be able to challenge the very things which we could step up to the plate more, and be intuitive, and have precognitive conditioning proper from common sense, and it's intentional value. So what's done at home as a child, where you're learning and you are taught people are basically good versus people are bad, you've got an intentional value more to survive, and that's automatic, and it causes one to have shifted more into this agentic state, because you can see a legitimacy of authority, which comes down from we the people, down to a corporation, not the other way around. It's a consequence of an ethicalness of common custom time worn. And there is quorum sensing where a system is, because it's a check and balance like it's supposed to be. You've got an oath where somebody is in office and is to have safe passage and safe harbour and gives this to others equally. And is somebody under oath to you and I and are doing what this is? And is there an equity interest? Well, until it could be shown, and consideration easily shown, and also consent, or that didn't occur. Something was really selective and conflicted. And what is it that your motive was, for instance, more unity consciousness, or to have ruled by deception? And so, you've got unity consciousness, but you've got that beast barrack training also, where something is which isn't natural, and it isn't a need of self-autonomy. It's taken over and not questioned per se, yet this is what we're doing in the questionness of that, which you've got unity consciousness more in an autonomy more of what is moral and ethical, isn't it? And not certainly where someone's been fraternized. Yet something is really implicit and implied and intuitive, and this is what all have an agentic alignment with logic, with a continual rational, a continuum, yeah. Anyway, where someone is congruent, you'll always see parallel processedness of things. Where someone is incongruent, you can know probable criminal activity exists, because it's like a lot of things are incongruent around what criminal activity is, and stories don't add up at all. But truth, logic is what happened beforehand. You've got some context to be described of how did something arise. Now you're going to have a bigger sense of it all, aren't you? Good. But before that, somebody could kind of perhaps have a bit of a narrowed out sort of view. But it's really, this agentic state is automatic. It's implicit, you see. And it comes from larger chunks of information that you've absorbed below. And maybe that should be questioned, because if it is, then you've got proper ethical conditioning of taking aboard new information, but you could imagine if larger pieces of something that was said to be science which isn't, but if it's science, which it always has to be, because you've got an agentic state to be more scientific, not scientific at all, or everybody's the same. And so what is that set below that's caused you to have this precognitive condition but we've got a process. It's so simple. No one has to think about it at all. And then you look and see, and you can hear what's going on, and you can try law and things. And that's only with the people, which is a chain of command down to the corpse, which can do things that's like this. Yes? Mm-hmm. And so it's real situational specific obedience more to be in an agentic state, shifted already, and be active where you are to bring about change where this can and does. And it's really what happened in this new epoch, you see. It was an accepted social hierarchy which already is from Time Warnerness, which is relevant to any discretion that someone else has, or someone, everybody. You've got to have due diligence that could be easily shown, where someone's been given consideration, and both parties need to have consideration, otherwise it's sort of really forced, isn't it? And equity really is common law, and inequity, where that is being guarded against, is often just unilateral types of contracts to try to preserve some sort of right, but it's generally a fictional right, but it's supposed to be a natural right. Yeah, that's all. Okay. So anyway, all lawful legitimacy is contractual, and only the world holds together because of it. Everybody's under the Magna Carta, all the 192 other corps that is owned by Superpower, and that it's Time worn, of course, that principles under international law, you cannot have a nation be held more than 210 years more in bondage and this sort of thing. But principles of international law really is what your common law principles are where you are. And as a child learns, the law, of course, necessity really is a doctrine which allows you to disobey any unlawful act to preserve and care for life and another's natural right, which that's how we're supposed to everybody be, because you're under oath. And as equity interest exists, you can see consideration, you can show it, because you can see consent versus an insensual process from acquiescence. Yet that's not anything you and I would do ourselves. So for what's the common practice, really, you and I, we really could have been retaliated against, and that would be wrong, of course, because that's not common practice to allow such. That's protected disclosure and conduct, which to be protected. It's a crime where, again, somebody retaliates against somebody who's speaking what truth is. And so in an autonomous state where everybody is in this agentic state, and it's an ethical common law principle that you don't harm, injure, cost, or damage anybody, because otherwise then somebody has a claim that can be settled, and we would settle that claim for you. So, excuse me. So violence really can have been institutionalized by someone's sort of training, which is pretty abnormal. And those are people who could act in a manner that's not like you or I could, just to be controlled, and you've got warlords just taking over somewhere. I mean, all in the background, is everything being controlled in a world which is being pirated? So that fraternizedness within the company, more or less, that normalizes the deviant behavior, which really looked at, you could see it's psychopathic and sociopathic, which behave more as a pattern, as an agentic state. You and I, we really have an obedience more to simply live simply that others can simply live. And it's a lot to do with children being born out of form of discretion, all land being used more like live food areas, and so you've got a great usage of the land, live food housing and things like that, which is built more into the ground and everything. In the future, and no borders, and everybody being compensated for the next 210 years for the travesty that's everybody is like a COVID Holocaust survivor. Only that everybody really is ordinary, that you can enter into more normal upbringing where children are, and a paradigm paralysis like being can be cleared away, because otherwise then somebody's going to go along and they say, well, are you the chosen one, meaning that somebody's not or something? What's that? It's really a new mindset where you and I, we're more equal, absolute, and that's liberty, and you're able to take new information on perfectly. You can easily cite what the other person's view is, and you can cite what that is, and that's now decisions really being made more from consensus building. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's the change occurs more as sisters all come together and get the core of what this is, because that happens more natural. It comes from empathics, and everybody gets involved, but it sort of gets triggered more from this. Yes, basically. Anyway, I'm going to just about run out of my gas here, and hopefully we've given everybody a little something to consider. And you could learn more by looking into articles and looking into the Puthola Bones and this sort of thing, and coming back to your live stream, and sometimes participating and listening right firsthand, straight up, in what we're recording, Lukey. Anyway, mate, love you, mate, and
So,
we'll catch up to everybody. Oh, go. You got a
one more
question?
thing before you go, if you have a second.
Yeah.
So, I have, I believe it's the Path of Hollow Bones. It's like maybe 10 books altogether,
Yes.
or more.
Yeah.
Somebody that I know printed them out for me, because I don't know if there's a digital copy, but somebody in my chat was asking, Grady Matt, he says, what techniques could you give to enhance control of your words for more positive outcomes? So I was thinking maybe give them the book.
Oh, that's, well, the Toltecs always taught someone to be on a path with a heart, and you have to look to see, does that path have a heart? If it does, good. It's such a quick and easy thing, isn't it? And you could ask yourself, did the information that you had inside yourself, did it come from within you, which generally it didn't. 90% of the time it actually came from somebody else, and one sort of mind reading when they're thinking thoughts like that. So one clears away 90% of all their chatter, 10% is left, and one then asks themselves, oh, that comes from me, that internal chatter, and that was my voice, and what's the positive value of it? And if nothing is positive, it's dropped. And so that's a quick, fast way is to be dropping of the things of an internal dialogue. So somebody's more living in the moment, and this is really what our awareness is. And we're modelling proper excellence where anything is for leadership. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jubb. I really appreciate you taking the time to connect in, and I would love to do it again in a future time when you have a moment.
Yeah, come out. Love you, mate.
Okay, thanks again.
It's a great question, mate.
Have a great day. Bye, everybody.